Hello, and welcome to SkiiSKiis Book Club, where hopefully every couple of weeks I can talk about a new book I've read and hopefully spark a conversation or get people to try it out for themselves. Unfortunately, however, the book on today's agenda is hardly something that I could recommend to most people unless they have a very strong stomach. It's got fun things like violence, sexual depravity, and a fairly good movie adaptation, and I really don't know how to feel about it. Today we are talking about American Psycho, a novel published in 1991 by Vintage and written by Bret Easton Ellis. I will mention that I managed to listen to it through Audible, and I know it's a very touchy subject whether or not you're really reading a book by listening to it, but I don't seem to have a lot of time between work and being too busy at home to really sit on the couch and just read a book, so I try to listen to audiobooks while I work. But I absolutely feel as if I read it, and the narrator, Pablo Schreiber, did a fucking great job being the voice of Patrick Bateman in this story. Story. Patrick Bateman is an investment banker on Wall Street who spends his days hanging out at dinner parties with friends or at his office, P&P, where he hardly does anything except set up more dinner dates. He's around 26, and you can tell that Patrick is becoming bored with life and beginning to disassociate more and more with the society around him. A lot of the book is a sort of monotone talk between him and several other colleagues over the importance of pocket squares or the color of shoes. But even early on, you can tell that Patrick is a fucking asshole. He despises homeless people and often pretends to give them money only to take it away. He has a fuming hatred for every race that isn't white, and he hates gay men, although funnily enough, he loves to watch lesbians have sex on videotapes. We learn that Patrick is a complete narcissist, and whenever this perception of himself is shattered, it is done very comedically in stark contrast to the latter portions of the book. There's a moment in the first third of the book where he is showing off his new business card and thinks very highly of it, but as time goes on, his friends show theirs, and he starts going crazy because he can't fathom that they'd have something better than himself. There is a heavy emphasis on details throughout the novel that feels like a joke itself, although I've seen it mentioned that it has to do with the first-person narration and how Patrick sees the world, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard a suit being described in this damn book. Patrick also loves to go on tangents about music from the era, where he talks at length about various albums, their producers, and the meaning of each song to him. Over time, though, he starts a slow descent into utter chaos as he forces prostitutes to have sex with each other and then makes them watch each other die. He kills several homeless people, along with a couple of colleagues that have pissed him off. To sum up the plot and not get too far into spoiling it, Patrick is not doing too good in the head. He has begun killing more and more frequently due to his stress and has been more and more depraved with it as time goes on. A lot of the book is mainly done for laughs, or to make you really despise Patrick, and fortunately, he mostly gets what's coming to him. In the last third of the novel, the story does start to pick up, but you get the feeling that maybe you can't trust Patrick as a narrator, because not everything adds up. I mean, the author himself even said that American Psycho is his most autobiographical novel, and I think that he's not talking about how he loves to rape girls or chop them up, but I think it has a lot to do with his time spent around yuppie culture in the 80s, and I think that this line near the end sums up a very personal meaning for not just Patrick, but also himself. There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory, and though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there. Patrick isn't always that unlikable, and despite me not feeling bad for him, I can relate to his detachment from society, and can understand how he became so cynical. For the end of the video, I'd like to read a couple of excerpts from the chapter titled Girls. This is one of the worst chapters in the book, and gives you a good idea of what it's like to listen to it or read it. All I can think about is blood, and what their blood will look like, and though Tori knows what to do, how to eat it doesn't subdue me, and I push her away from Tiffany's and start licking and biting at the pink, soft, wet while Tori spreads her ass and sits on Tiffany's face while fingering her own. I'm biting hard, gnawing at Tiffany's, and she starts tensing up. Relax, I say soothingly. She starts squealing, trying to pull away, and finally she screams as my teeth rip into her flesh. I use mace to blind both of them momentarily, and then I knock them unconscious with the butt of a nail gun. Tori awakens to find herself tied up, bent over the side of the bed on her back, her face covered in blood, because I've cut off her lips with a pair of nail scissors. I start by skinning Tori a little, making incisions with a steak knife and ripping bits of flesh from her legs and stomach while she screams in vain, begging for mercy in a high, thin voice. And I hope she realizes her punishment will be relatively light compared to what I have planned for the other one. I keep spraying Tori with mace, and then I try to cut off her fingers with nail scissors. And finally, I pour acid onto her belly and genitals, but none of this comes close to killing her, so I resort to stabbing her in the throat. And eventually the blade of the knife breaks off and what's left of her neck, stuck on bone, and I stop.